Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Monday, July the 1st, 2019. The second half has begun. So for you snow lovers, it's all downhill from here. And actually, I'm going to show you something a little later on that's going to really make you just throw your hands up in the air, philosophically speaking, anyhow. But we have a weather week ahead of us that on the whole, I would probably describe as quiet in the sense that it's typical early summertime weather. We are not, I don't see anything in terms of widespread outbreaks of severe weather this week. Yes, there will be pockets of severe weather, certainly, that we'll be dealing with. But in terms of a widespread outbreak, not happening. As far as the weather across much of the country, it's really kind of typical early July. For us here, we're certainly enjoying in the Northeast down into the northern mid-Atlantic states today some utterly delightful air that resulted from a big storm that is out, well, relative to the time of year anyway, a big storm that is out just south and east of Nova Scotia now and churning away in the Atlantic. And I actually have, I brought up the satellite view from with Canada in perspective, and this really works for us today because it kind of shows what's happening with respect to where the jet stream, the southern end of that jet stream is, and what we will be seeing along the way as we move toward through this week. Now, first off, the system that is south of and east of Nova Scotia is pretty obvious there on the lower right, and this brought through some pretty wicked severe weather across for my area, for Long Island. I was actually in it yesterday while it came ashore off Long Island Sound. I was right along the North Shore in Setauket, New York, doing, of all things, going through an old, one of the oldest cemeteries on Long Island, looking at some of the grave markers going back to the 1600s, part of the George Washington's spy unit. There's a famous story behind that, and there's actually I believe it's a Netflix series called Turn, which kind of takes you through it. There's a little bit of let's call it creative or poetic license that they use, but on the whole, it's a very interesting and fascinating period during the Revolutionary War. I'm going through these gravestones, and you see the dark clouds come in, and of course, the thunderstorm was threatening. Got in the car and was driving back along toward Port Jefferson along the North Shore, and we came through to a place where trees were down, and I had an exploding electrical transformer on a telephone pole next to me going off. So it was fun, and there was actually quite a bit of damage. 2 lives were lost in this particular thunderstorm. And I think it just kind of goes to the idea that when you have these thunderstorm threats in the summertime, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get them. And sometimes these things do tend to blow up. The upper low that caused all this, that swung a trough through here, was unusually strong for this time of year. And that triggered off these thunderstorms, even though we really weren't in an overly tropical or humid air mass, but the dynamics were insane. And you had a lead storm that came in a little after about 1 p.m., a little after lunchtime, and then that kind of fizzled out. But then the second band fired up with the trough itself, and that's what caused the thunderstorms. But my point is, when you look at all of the when you look at the flow from Canada here on the satellite, what we're going to be dealing with here is disturbances coming through every day or two, and they're pretty obvious there. There's one across the northern Great Lakes now, back into the Dakotas. There's a second one that is swinging through southwest Canada and almost, but not quite, to the U.S. border. And there's a big upper low there up in north central Canada that's sort of driving all of this. On the upper right, you can see the clear skies that's over Greenland, and that will I will kind of explain this. I'll give you a hint at what's going on. but there's a blocky look to the atmosphere, and it's probably a blocky look that if we were sitting in January, the snow lovers would be quite happy. The bottom line is that with respect to the upper air pattern, we're kind of on the southern edge of the jet stream. We're going to get these systems coming through every couple of days. When one goes by as ahead of it, it'll get humid. That's what we're going to see in the Northeast and in the mid-Atlantic states tomorrow. Some thunderstorms maybe tomorrow evening. A little shot of dry air between it and the next one that will probably approach for later in the week, for Thursday, for the 4th of July. It doesn't look all that particularly potent. The next major change, I think, is going to come over the weekend, and that is probably the setup for the best chance for showers and thunderstorms. But for a lot of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states this week, much of the time it'll be rain-free and some pretty decent weather for the 4th of July. Look at these dew points at the moment as of 6:06 Eastern Time. Hopefully they'll pop back up. I've been having a little bit of trouble with this map today. I've been having issues with the data, but these dew points are in the 50s for all of southern New England, across Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Temperatures in the low to mid 80s right now, and you've got dew points in the 50s down into Virginia and West Virginia, and further south as you get into North Carolina. Even here you have dew points in the upper 50s, although we are seeing some temperatures up in the low and middle 90s as you head down towards South Carolina, and it's particularly warm down in southern parts of South Carolina and in through southern Georgia, where you've got temperatures in the mid to upper 90s. But now here's where you get into your tropical dew point. So this low offshore did a really good job in pulling down some drier air. It's not necessarily, to a certain extent, it's cooler air, but this time of year, the sun at its highest point in the sky, the air in Canada is dry, but it's not really all that cool. Meanwhile, here's your surface low sitting just east of Nova Scotia. It's a 998 surface low on the plot, and that is moving slowly eastward. You have the next weather system it's back through the western lakes, and of course there's a stationary boundary separating those dry dew points in the 50s to low 60s from the tropical dew points that are south and west of there in the southeastern part of the United States and down into Florida, where you get into your dew points that are in the upper 60s and lower 70s. So that humidity will be advancing eastward, and the stationary front, which will probably just be a weak warm front that goes by, you'll hardly notice it. I don't think there's going to be much with that warm front as we transition over to higher humidity during the day on Tuesday. As far as severe weather is concerned for Tuesday, I just want to show you that there is an east-west band, a marginal risk of severe weather across Pennsylvania, back through the lower lakes, and back further into the upper Mississippi Valley. The eastern extent of that marginal risk makes it to about western New Jersey. We might nudge that a little bit further to the east. It wouldn't be at all a shock, but for now, this is what SPC is doing. And I'm going to go back to day one, which is today, the area for this evening. Slight risk up in northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, a little small portion there, southeastern South Dakota. It's a very narrow area of slight risk. You've got a larger area of slight risk up in Wyoming and through, looks like much of the eastern half of Montana into western North Dakota. So you get a flavor for what's happening here. Take a look. Now I'm going to show you the teleconnections. And Chuck, thanks for mentioning it to me. This is a time of year where I really don't look at the teleconnections very often. But this weekend and into next week, you have a positive Pacific North America index, ridge building in the west, a negative NAO through the whole 2-week period. That gets, for this time of year, a reading of minus 100 isn't too shabby. So that's not a half bad NAO that's negative going through the weekend and into next week. Look at this EPO. That is an off the wall. That's a minus 200 reading in the wintertime, is a strong negative reading. So relative to the time of year, being that this is summertime, That's an off-the-wall reading on the teleconnections. Again, this is just a snapshot of what the models did, but it gives you an idea of what's happening atmospherically, where we've been seeing a tendency for these weather systems to move eastward. It hasn't really been all that warm when you consider the time of year. We're seeing temperatures that are in the 90s where they're supposed to be in the 90s. It's the areas further to the north where the heat has been, you get these hot days, but they've been kind of borderline hot. For us anyway, it gets humid, it gets borderline humid. We had that one day on Saturday that was really, really very humid. But the rest of the time, it's just been kind of on the moderate side. And of course, today it's bone dry. Now watch with the upper air. I'm using the European model tonight, but take a look at the upper air, and you were swinging the trough that went through on Sunday, that arm that swung off the New England coast and produced those thunderstorms from my area east. Upper low sitting in the Gulf of Maine, heads out towards Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, lifts up. So now the jet stream pulls up here as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. The southern edge of those westerly winds is along the Canadian border. You've got this upper low in central Canada, troughing out in the west. And gradually, as we move through Friday and the weekend, those westerlies are going to start coming back down later in the weekend and early next week, with troughing along the east coast and a trough into the west, which eventually, according to the European anyway, lifts up. The ridge builds up in the west toward the end of the forecast period, and a vigorous upper low drops down into the area just north of Lake Superior. So you've got a flow here that comes pretty much from northern Canada all the way down into the plains, into the Great Lakes, and eventually gets its way into the northeast. You have an upper low that's sitting up east of Newfoundland. You've got blockiness across Greenland. Not a half bad looking pattern for the snow lovers if this were the winter time, but it's not. But what it does mean for us is that it does move weather systems along, and it also will eventually mean for some chances for showers and thunderstorms. But I think we're going to be in pretty good shape for much of this week. So here's the we'll take a look at the GFS. This is the new GFS run, and of course you see its reflection of the radar tonight, with showers and storms across the Great Lakes, which move eastward, and then we get into some of that late Tuesday evening, some showers and storms being indicated here. And then Wednesday, I'm thinking that Wednesday's going to be a day where there's not going to be a whole lot of activity. It'll shift down into Virginia and North Carolina on Wednesday, and also back to the middle Mississippi Valley. Much of the day will be a mix of sun and clouds. Temperatures will be in the mid upper 80s to low 90s. And then for the 4th of July, looks to me like any thunderstorm activity will be widely scattered and inland. The next front is still a ways away. Friday, perhaps a chance for some late day storms. And now as we get into the weekend, we're going to have a cold front on top of us. When I say on top of us, I'm talking about right along the East Coast, from Boston to New York City, Philadelphia, down to Washington. That boundary zone is going to set up right along there. So I think you're going to see a better chance for thunderstorms late Saturday to Saturday night, and then again on Sunday, where a wave forms on the front. Now this is, you've got this negative NAO at work, so you're going to see a low that's going to try and form. I'm hoping that it doesn't do it this way, where we get into an onshore flow, because that'll make things a bit on the cool side. Perhaps the frontal boundary will hang around a little longer. But look, the bottom line for much of this week is that the weather is going to be fine for anyone that's interested in the summertime activities. I think you're certainly okay through the daytime Saturday, and we'll throw up some question marks after that with regards to Sunday. We do have a hurricane, about to have, I believe, Barbara is a hurricane. I'm sorry. Yes, top winds 85 miles an hour, and there it is on the Pacific side. We've been talking about how There's been a general lack of activity on the Pacific side, but it's finally gotten going here. This is a fish storm, and it may become a major hurricane because it's still pretty far to the south. It's got a well-defined circulation here. You can see how much it's gotten better organized through the course of today, and we'll probably see this achieve major hurricane status. It will also disappear long before it gets anywhere close to Hawaii, so there's no worries there. In fact, it will reach peak intensity during Tuesday and Wednesday as a major hurricane, and then weaken as it starts to gain some latitude. Right now it's down, still down closer to 10 north than it is to 15 north. And again, this is just for meteorological interests only that we're showing this. There's nothing going on the Atlantic side for us to worry about. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the current radar across the nation, and we can take a look at some of the pop-up showers and thunderstorms that are going on in the southeast and back in the lower Mississippi Valley and parts of the Tennessee Valley. A little bit of pop-up action in Florida. A little bit more than that in extreme southeastern Louisiana. And then you've got the area where we have the risk of severe weather across the lakes and back through southern Minnesota. And from there, we also have some activity, kind of busy in New Mexico and Colorado today with showers and storms. And we're seeing some showers and storms on up in the northern Rockies. 6:16 Eastern time right now, so if you're watching this later on, just remember, if it's when it comes to severe weather, please be sure to go to your local National Weather Service office page, and you can get to that by going to weather.gov. Just a quick look at WPC's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days. Much of this is going to be scattered thunderstorm driven. Now, you do have WPC showing some loftier amounts in the eastern Carolinas, with some 3, 4, 5 inch amounts being indicated there. Also, up from Minnesota and through the Dakotas and into Montana. If we're going to have a flow that's going to keep bringing systems down from the north, it's going to make for some busy times with regards to some showers and thunderstorms along wherever that frontal boundary winds up setting up. Of course, you're in typical summertime in the southwest and most of the west, where it's basically bone dry, except up in northwesternmost Washington. But that lighter green color, by the way, we're talking under 1/4 inch of rain. And we also do have a little bit of a max area being indicated by WPC in the central Appalachians. Just a side note, I mentioned this last week, and I'll mention it again now. Next week, I am going to be taking some time camping in upstate New York. I don't know what my signal situation is, so I may wind up being forced to not do very much as far as live streams are concerned, and not very much as doing website posts are concerned. So I don't know. I won't have any idea until I get there. I've been told that there is some signal activity, but I'm thinking that the long live streams are probably not going to be, I'm not going to do them next week, the way my mind is working right now. If I have a signal, I'm going to keep live streams short and to the point, and hopefully I'll be able to get on a Weather in 5 every day, at the very least be able to do that. So just watch your notifications going forward. And by the way, also a good time, because I know a lot of you have brought up the fact that notifications are oftentimes an issue. And digging around, let me just let you have to do a couple of things. Make sure you're logged into your YouTube accounts, okay? So this way, that's one thing. Make sure your notifications are turned on. Make sure your notifications are turned on your phone for YouTube if you're accessing it through the app. And then go into your phone settings and make sure that the notifications are turned on. So it's not just a matter of doing it in one place. You may have to do it in 3 or 4 different places in order to make sure you get notifications. and hopefully, if that's still an issue for you, that it solves the problem. All right, let's chat a little bit. Javon Perry, you don't have to do it. It's your time alone and your vacation. Yeah, but you know what? Even when I'm on vacation, I can't fish all day long. Well, I can, but I still like to keep a degree of consistency. Since I started posting on my website back in I believe it was the end of 2013. But I have not missed a day. I have posted every single day. I have not missed a single day of putting up at least one weather website post. So I would like to be able to maintain that streak, keeping my fingers crossed that it is the case. But I will tell you this: even if I do have a signal, I am gonna. There's less is going to be. I'm going to be putting up less next week. So that's for darn sure. The nights have been nice and cool, says Paul Roman, and hopefully that continues. I think Chuck Cardillo up in the Catskills can attest to that. And for me, I would love it if we keep this pattern like this as long as we can keep it. At least keep it long enough to get us through that peak heating period into the first part of August. I'm a happy camper. Now, that doesn't mean we can't get a late season heat wave. Just because we don't have a big ridge in the east now doesn't mean it can't show up later on in the summer into August and September, early September. Certainly could happen. But for now, hey, as long as as long as we have as few days as we had on Saturday when the dew points were up into the 70s, I am a happy camper. I do need a vacation, James, NASCAR fan. I do. I get to the point sometimes where I am having trouble completing sentences and having trouble grasping my thoughts. So I'm having one of those times right now. Some of that's age-driven, but the bottom line is, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it easy. Because pretty soon when the hurricane season revs up, I'm going to be doing a lot. So I want to get my batteries recharged. Lewis Hecht, FYI, no notifications today, 5 and 5 of the evening show. Okay, so just like as I said, make sure, check notifications. Make sure you're logged into your YouTube account on YouTube. Make sure that your phone, on YouTube on your phone, if you're using the YouTube app, that the notifications are turned on your phone. And then make sure you go into the settings on your phone and make sure that your notifications are turned on. That should resolve most of the issues. YouTube, as I've been reading, they send out billions of notifications. And if I'm doing a live stream or if I'm putting up a video at a time where some people that have 1 million subscribers and get a billion video views, if I'm putting up my stuff at the same time they are, my notifications could wind up getting lost, and it stresses the system. Google may be this huge powerhouse, but it's not infallible, and it does occasionally. They do have technical issues. We had some outages, in fact, over the last a month or so that have shown up. But the bottom line is, make sure you got all those things checked off. I usually try, if you're on Patreon, Lou, you're on Patreon, so I always put the live stream time for Patreon members. I put it up there, and I always put a post up at least an hour or so before the live stream. Sometimes I put it up even 3 hours before when I'm sure about when I'm going to do it. So if you miss all of that, but if you're on the Patreon platform, you will get the notifications. The 5 and 5 went out. The 5 and 5 is not done live. Okay, I pre-tape that, so you would only get a notification when the video goes up. But even then, I did put it up late today on Patreon, so one way or another. But the 5 and 5, and for Patreon members, the 10 and 5, or perhaps it might be 10 and 10, as Izzy suggested. You'll get that straight on Patreon. You won't get a YouTube notification for that. The freak hailstorm Michael Azera, I did see the video of it with, what was it, several feet of hail up in Mexico City. Crazy. I don't know how the meteorology works down, and I know that that's mountainous terrain. Mountainous terrain there, subject to a lot of earthquake activity, which is a separate issue, obviously. But yeah, though that was really, really crazy video. Johnny, I think you asked, the hurricane changed the weather pattern down the road. Are you talking about the ones in the Pacific are just kind of doing what they're supposed to do right now? So there's no impact from any of those. I don't think there's anything going on in the West Pacific. Sometimes you get the typhoons. If they recurve, they can reinforce troughing in the East Ridge in the West. But I didn't really get, I really didn't give it a close view to see what is going on in that particular area. Mahogany 2680, nice to see you on board. Haven't seen you in a while. Iron Mine, good to see you on board. Car Recalls, thanks for liking Weather in 5. He keeps it short and to the point in the morning. Look, a lot of you like the long live streams, so and I enjoy doing them, but sometimes they're tough. They are certainly a lot tougher. And on the other hand, in the morning, you're just getting out the door. You got things to do. You don't have really time to sit through a 30-minute show or a 40-minute show. So you want it quick and to the point. So I came up with this 5 in 5 concept. You get all 5 days in 5 minutes. I try to cover a large geographic area from, say, Maryland to southern New England, and going back west into at least east central PA. And this at least gives you an idea of what to expect. Now, it's easy right now because of the kind of weather we're having. It may get more complicated as we get into the fall and in the winter months. I will deal with that when we get there. All right, so I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. Thanks for being here on this Monday. It's a big vacation week. A lot of folks have off. You might not, or you're working the early part of the week. You're off the latter part of the week. You were creative. You had the weekend off. You've got all of this week off, and next weekend or somewhere in between. For me, I'm working every day this week, including the 4th of July. But I'm going to be off, as I said, on my little adventure for next week. So we'll be back tomorrow, roughly the same time. And Weather in 5 in the morning. Patreon members, you'll get Weather in 10, which is a little more technical, later on in the morning to give you a feel of what's going on in the long range. You can call it 10 in 10, I guess. All right. So have a great evening. And by the way, if you are interested in joining the Patreon platform, a number of you on the chat already there. But if you're new and you want to join, there's a link on the descriptor to this live stream or the descriptor to this video. If you're watching it on the replay, it's my subscription site. It's $2 a month. If weather is very important and you need some extra weather analysis, there are some higher tiers available. But $2 a month gets you a lot. So consider it, and it goes a long way in supporting what I'm doing between videos and Facebook and websites and everything else. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.